In October 2013, federal agents seized enough data from a single website to fill more than 700 basic MacBooks. Hidden within those files lay the blueprint of a digital black market that had processed over $1.2 billion in illegal transactions. But this wasn't just about money. This was about an idea that began in 2011 when a 26-year-old physics student named Ross Ulbricht opened his laptop and started coding what would become the most sophisticated criminal marketplace the internet had ever seen. In just 2 years, this marketplace, known as Silk Road, would transform from a simple economic experiment into an underground empire that would challenge the very foundations of law enforcement. It would attract everyone, from small-time drug dealers to international arms merchants, from corrupt federal agents to idealistic libertarians. And at the center of it all was a man who thought he had outsmarted the system. The numbers were staggering. Over 1 million registered users, more than 950,000 transactions, and a commission structure that made its creator wealthy beyond imagination. But what made Silk Road truly revolutionary wasn't its size, it was its sophistication. This wasn't just another black market. This was Silicon Valley meets the underworld, complete with customer service, dispute resolution, and vendor ratings. What the FBI didn't realize when they began their investigation was that they weren't just hunting a criminal. They were trying to shut down an idea that had already escaped into the wild, an idea that would spawn hundreds of copycat markets and transform the dark web from a technological backwater into a thriving criminal ecosystem, one that now generates billions in annual revenue. A quiet Tuesday afternoon, San Francisco's Glen Park Library. Ross Ulbricht sat alone in the science fiction section, his laptop open to what looked like a typical chat window. The 29-year-old could have been any other tech worker in the Bay Area, but at that moment, he was speaking with what he believed was a high-level administrator of Silk Road. The arrest was carefully choreographed. 2 agents, posing as a quarreling couple, created a distraction just feet away. In that split second of chaos, Ross's laptop was snatched from his hands before he could activate the encryption that would have destroyed every crucial piece of evidence. The man known to millions as Dread Pirate Roberts, the philosophical kingpin behind Silk Road, was caught. But this wasn't just an arrest. This was the end of an era and the beginning of something far more complex. This story goes far beyond one website, far beyond one arrest. It's about the collision of ideology and power. It's about how technology amplifies both our highest ideals and our darkest impulses. It's the story of how a brilliant mind went from promoting free market libertarianism to allegedly ordering 6 murders, how federal agents transformed from hunters to hunted, and how one website became the template for a multi-billion-dollar dark web industry, one that continues to evolve today. To understand how we got here, how a physics student with no criminal record created what the FBI would call the most sophisticated and extensive criminal marketplace on the internet, we need to go back to when the internet was still finding its footing, back to when Bitcoin was worth pennies, and back to when a young libertarian named Ross Ulbricht first decided to put his economic theories to the test. What you're about to witness isn't just the rise and fall of the world's most notorious website. It's a story of power and corruption, of idealism and greed, of technology and its unintended consequences. And most importantly, it's about how one man's dream of an economic utopia sparked a digital revolution that law enforcement is still grappling with today. Most people don't understand. Silk Road wasn't just a website. It was the beginning of something we're still fighting today. Something that's grown far beyond what anyone could have predicted. Before he became the mastermind behind the world's most notorious black market, Ross Ulbricht was just another face in the crowd, a college student, a dreamer, a believer in free markets and personal freedom. But what set him apart was an idea that would take him from the halls of academia to the depths of the dark web. And like most revolutions, it all started quietly. He was born in Austin, Texas in 1984, raised in what many would consider an ideal American household. His parents, Kirk and Lynn Ulbricht, instilled in him strong values, hard work, integrity, an insatiable thirst for knowledge. But from an early age, Ross was different. Not rebellious, just questioning. He wasn't the kind of kid who accepted things at face value. He wanted to know why the world worked the way it did, and more importantly, who made the rules. Westridge High School. Ross wasn't just a good student, he was exceptional. A star on the debate team, a natural in science, a thinker who questioned everything from government policies to philosophy. While others were concerned with grades and social life, Ross was diving into the works of Ludwig von Mises, Murray Rothbard, and other libertarian thinkers. To him, these weren't just theories. They were blueprints for a world that made more sense than the one he saw around him. A world without government control. A world where people could trade freely without interference. By the time Ross entered Penn State University in 2002, his philosophy was already taking shape. While his professors taught him science and engineering, he was teaching himself something far more radical. The idea that governments were fundamentally corrupt, that centralized power was an illusion, and that true freedom, real economic liberty, was only possible outside the reach of the state. He wasn't just reading these ideas, he was absorbing them, and one day he would put them to the test. Then came the moment that changed everything. 2008, the financial world collapsed. The government printed trillions of dollars to bail out banks, while millions of ordinary people lost everything. To Ross, this wasn't just economic mismanagement. It was proof that the system was rigged, that government intervention was nothing more than theft with extra steps, and that if the world was ever going to change, someone would have to build something different. At the time, he had no idea what that something would be, but then, in 2009, came the missing piece. The world was introduced to a new kind of money, a currency that no government could control, no bank could print, a currency built on trustless transactions, powered by mathematics, secured by cryptography. Bitcoin. For Ross, it wasn't just a new technology, it was a revolution waiting to happen. He spent months studying it. He saw what most people missed, that Bitcoin wasn't just money, it was the perfect tool for an unregulated, untouchable black market. Then came Tor, a browser that allowed anyone to navigate the internet anonymously. It was originally designed by the US Navy to protect government communications, but Ross saw something different, a way to create a marketplace that no one could track, no borders, no oversight, no rules. And so, he got to work. He wasn't just building a website, he was engineering an ecosystem. He needed a secure hosting solution, a payment system that couldn't be traced, a way to ensure trust between buyers and sellers who would never meet in person, and he solved each problem one by one. By January 2011, the framework was complete. He named it Silk Road, a reference to the ancient trade routes that connected East and West, a marketplace beyond the reach of governments, and to test his creation, he became his first vendor. On February 1st, 2011, Silk Road officially launched, a tiny hidden website with only a handful of products, but within weeks, the world had found it. What started as a small experiment was about to become something far bigger than Ross had ever imagined, something that would change the dark web, law enforcement, and online crime forever. And the world had no idea what was coming next. By early 2012, Silk Road was no longer just an experiment. It was an unstoppable force, a hidden marketplace unlike anything the world had ever seen, where money moved freely, where power belonged not to governments, but to code. And at the center of it all was a single decision that would change digital commerce forever. When Ross made Bitcoin the exclusive currency of Silk Road, it was trading at just $2. Many called it reckless, but Ross saw something they didn't. To him, Bitcoin wasn't just money, it was a declaration of monetary independence. Bitcoin isn't just a currency, it's a revolution. And the numbers told the story of that revolution in motion. January 2012, $50,000 in monthly transactions. June 2012, $1.2 million. December 2012, $7 million. Mid-2013, an estimated $30 to $40 million per month. Bitcoin's value wasn't just rising, it was exploding, fueled in part by its unstoppable utility on Silk Road. And suddenly, what started as a radical experiment was now a proof of concept for an entirely new kind of economy. Silk Road wasn't just a marketplace, it was a philosophy in action. Ross, now operating under the alias Dread Pirate Roberts, was no longer just a creator. He was a leader, a visionary, and to some, a revolutionary. Discussions on the site weren't just about drugs and transactions, they were about liberty, Austrian economics, libertarian theory, the nature of freedom itself. For many, Silk Road wasn't just a place to buy, it was a place to believe. But philosophy alone wouldn't keep Silk Road alive. Its success depended on engineering, on security, on trust. And Ross built an infrastructure so sophisticated, it put even legitimate e-commerce platforms to shame. Silk Road wasn't chaos. It was a well-oiled machine. An Amazon for the underground economy, built on trustless systems and unbreakable anonymity. But unlike most black markets, Silk Road had rules. Ross refused to allow certain items, anything that violated libertarian principles. No stolen property, no fraudulent items, no services that harm others, no weapons of mass destruction, emphasis on harm reduction and safety. This was not the dark web as it had existed before. This was something different, something bigger. By mid-2013, Silk Road had over 10,000 product listings and more than 100,000 active users. And Ross Ulbricht, once just a physics student with a dream, had become the leader of an empire. Silk Road's success didn't just change online crime, it created an industry. The blueprint Ross built was so effective, it inspired dozens of imitators. A new digital black market revolution had begun. But power attracts attention. And by late 2012, Silk Road had more than just customers. It had enemies. The US government was now fully aware of Silk Road, and what started as small-scale investigations quickly escalated into something far more serious. Because what law enforcement didn't realize was that Silk Road was just the tip of the iceberg. As Silk Road's profits soared, so did the stakes. Ross had built a fortress, but even fortresses have weak points. And soon, his first major mistake would set off a chain of events that would change everything. By late 2011, Silk Road had already processed millions of dollars in illegal transactions, and now the world was taking notice. The press had caught wind of it, the Bitcoin community was buzzing about it, and in the halls of the US Senate, a storm was about to break. The first real warning shot came from Senator Charles Schumer. He called it the most brazen criminal marketplace the internet has ever seen, and he had one demand: the immediate shutdown of Silk Road. The gauntlet had been thrown down, and the US government was about to declare war on Silk Road. But there was one major problem. Nobody knew how to take it down. Silk Road wasn't just another website, it was hidden, buried deep inside the Tor network, a system originally designed by the US Navy for anonymous communications, and now it was being used against them. To dismantle Silk Road, law enforcement wouldn't just need hackers, they would need a war room. A multi-agency task force was formed, each bringing a different weapon to the fight. FBI, Operation Marco Polo, focused on the technical infrastructure. DEA, Operation Dark Gold, conducted undercover purchases. Homeland Security, Task Force, Marco, tracked shipping routes and postal patterns. IRS Criminal Investigation Division, followed the money trail. Every agency had a different mission. Every agency was looking for a different weakness, and it wouldn't take long before they found one. The first real crack in Silk Road's armor came not from cybersecurity, but from something far simpler: the mail. June 2012. A routine Canadian border inspection flagged a suspicious package containing MDMA. Instead of making an immediate arrest, investigators did something different. They began tracking similar packages. Slowly, meticulously, they mapped out shipping patterns, connecting Silk Road vendors to physical addresses. It was only the beginning. And while Ross was busy expanding his empire, law enforcement was tightening the net. By late 2012, Ross had already narrowly escaped capture multiple times. Somehow, he always seemed to be one step ahead, but his luck was starting to run out. 2012, a server malfunction nearly exposed Silk Road's true IP address. An undercover agent successfully infiltrated the Silk Road support staff. Several high-profile vendors were arrested, but remained silent. A hosting provider almost leaked Silk Road's physical server locations. Silk Road was still operational, but the cracks were starting to show. And then, in early 2013, Ross made a fatal mistake. FBI cyber specialist Christopher Tarbell was scouring Silk Road's network infrastructure when he spotted something unbelievable. For a brief moment, Silk Road accidentally leaked its real IP address, a mistake that allowed the FBI to trace it back to a server in Iceland. For the first time, they had physical proof of where Silk Road was hosted. They had a piece of the puzzle, but they still didn't have Dread Pirate Roberts. But the real game changer? It didn't come from elite hacking skills. It didn't come from undercover operations. It came from something so mundane, so ordinary, that even the most seasoned investigators couldn't believe it. Deep in the archives of early Bitcoin forums, investigators found a post from 2011, someone advertising Silk Road, using the username Altoid. Months later, that same username posted a job listing for a Bitcoin startup. And where did applicants send their resumes? To an email address, rossulbricht@gmail.com. It was the first direct link between Silk Road and Ross Ulbricht. They had a name, they had a suspect, but that wasn't enough. If they wanted to bring down Dread Pirate Roberts, they needed to catch him in the act. By mid-2013, law enforcement had built a circumstantial case. They had tracked Bitcoin transactions. They had monitored Ross's online activity. They had surveilled his physical movements, but they still needed one thing. They needed to catch him logged into Silk Road's admin panel in real time. It was a near impossible task, but what they didn't know was that within their own ranks, something even darker was happening. A betrayal that would shake this investigation to its core. While the FBI was closing in on Ross Ulbricht, a darker story was unfolding inside the investigation itself. A story of betrayal, of corruption, of law enforcement agents becoming criminals themselves. 2 federal agents had been assigned to bring down Silk Road. Instead, they saw an opportunity. Carl Force, a DEA agent, had direct access to the case, inside knowledge, secret conversations, and privileged information. Sean Bridges, a cybercrime specialist with the Secret Service, had something even more dangerous: technical expertise, the ability to manipulate the very system they were investigating. These weren't just corrupt cops skimming money off a case. They built entire new identities inside Silk Road itself, playing both sides of the game. Knob, Carl Force's undercover identity, used to get close to Dread Pirate Roberts. French-made, a fake blackmailer demanding Bitcoin in exchange for secrets. Death from Above, an anonymous extortionist selling false information. Alpha 02, selling investigation details directly to criminals. Force demanded bribes. He offered inside information for a price, and when people refused, he threatened them. Send me 500 BTC or I will expose you. But while Force was busy playing the role of criminal, Sean Bridges had found an even easier way to get rich. After helping orchestrate the arrest of a Silk Road admin, Bridges used their credentials to steal from Silk Road itself. Over $800,000 in Bitcoin disappeared into his own accounts. But the most controversial chapter of this story was something far more sinister: murder for hire. Ross thought he was ordering a hit on an ex-employee who had stolen Bitcoin. What he didn't know was that the hitman was actually Carl Force himself. Force faked the murder, even sent staged torture photos, convincing Ross that the job had been completed. Ross allegedly paid $80,000 in Bitcoin for a hit that never actually happened. But something far more dangerous had happened instead. He had crossed a line. The man who had once believed in a free market utopia was now speaking with drug cartels, considering assassinations, and struggling with the weight of the empire he had created. Carl Force and Sean Bridges thought their crimes would disappear into the blockchain. They were wrong. Suspicious bank deposits, unauthorized use of government resources, undisclosed Silk Road communications, Bitcoin wallets linked directly to their personal accounts. what was supposed to be an untraceable fortune, left a digital trail straight to their doorstep. But here's the problem. Their corruption wasn't discovered until after Ross was convicted, and once it came to light, it complicated everything, compromised key evidence, created confusion about Ross's true role, weakened the prosecution's credibility, fueled conspiracy theories about Silk Road's takedown. The corruption of Force and Bridges became a key argument in Ross's appeals. To this day, many believe that Silk Road's case was tainted from the start, that Ross wasn't the kingpin they made him out to be, but rather a pawn in a game far bigger than he ever imagined. October 1st, 2013. The Glen Park Library, San Francisco. A seemingly ordinary afternoon. A man walks in carrying a laptop. He looks calm, focused. Just another tech worker in the city. He has no idea that he is about to become the center of one of the biggest cyber crime arrests in history. For weeks, the FBI had been tracking his every move. They knew his cafes, his jogging routes, his library visits, but knowing where he was wasn't enough. They needed to catch him in the act, logged in as the administrator of Silk Road, because without that, they had nothing. The plan was precise. Plainclothes agents stationed throughout the library, a tech team ready to secure his laptop, surveillance watching all exits, local police standing by, just in case. The moment he logged in, the net would close. At exactly 3:15 p.m., Ross connected to the library's Wi-Fi. Unknown to him, FBI cyber specialists were already monitoring the network. They waited. They watched for one crucial confirmation, that he was logged into Silk Road's admin panel. Then, they moved. That second was all they needed. In an instant, the game was over. The mastermind behind a billion-dollar drug empire was now just another man in handcuffs. The laptop, still open, still unlocked, on the screen. The entire Silk Road backend, live transactions, user data, encrypted communications. The FBI had everything. The fallout was immediate. 26,000 bitcoins seized, worth $3.6 million at the time. Silk Road shut down. The site replaced with an FBI seizure notice. Hundreds of vendors gone overnight. Thousands of users scrambling to delete their accounts. It was chaos. The entire cryptocurrency world felt the shockwave. Dark web markets went offline. Vendors disappeared. The game of cat and mouse between law enforcement and cyber criminals had just entered a new era. And the true scale of Silk Road was larger than anyone had imagined. And yet, the most shocking part of all, it wasn't how Silk Road fell. It was where Ross Ulbricht was caught. Not in a secret hideout, not on some faraway island, but in the quiet corner of a public library. The man who built a billion-dollar criminal empire had been caught like a college student overdue on a research paper. The fall of Silk Road marked the end of an era. But it also signaled the beginning of something else. Because where one dark web market fell, dozens more were already rising to take its place. The war between law enforcement and cybercrime was far from over. On May 29, 2015, in a packed federal courtroom, Judge Catherine Forrest delivered a sentence that would send shockwaves through the digital world. Life in prison, no parole, no second chances. Her words were unequivocal. You are no better than any other drug dealer. The stated purpose of Silk Road was to be beyond the law. In the world you created, you were captain. The courtroom fell silent, but outside, the debate had just begun. The severity of the sentence sparked immediate outrage. To some, it was a message, a warning to future online criminals. To others, it was an injustice, a punishment that far exceeded the crime. Supporters called it draconian, a sentence worse than some violent criminals receive. Critics deemed it appropriate, arguing that Silk Road had fueled addiction and crime. Legal experts remained divided, questioning the unprecedented length of the sentence. Digital rights activists protested, warning that it set a dangerous precedent. But then, a decade later, something no one saw coming. On January 22, 2025, in a move that sent shockwaves through both the legal and crypto communities, President Donald Trump issued a full and unconditional pardon for Ross Ulbricht. The reaction was immediate. Supporters saw it as justice finally served. Law enforcement officials called it a travesty. Libertarians hailed it as a victory for personal freedom. Critics labeled it purely political. But while Ross's personal story took a dramatic turn, his creation had already changed the world forever. Because when the government cut off one head, dozens more grew back. Alphabay, Dream Market, Empire Market, hundreds more. By 2025, the dark web market economy was bigger than ever. Annual revenues exceeding $2 billion, hundreds of active markets, advanced encryption protecting anonymity, decentralized payment systems. Silk Road wasn't the end, it was the beginning. The lessons learned from Silk Road's fall led to new innovations. Decentralized markets, no single point of failure. Enhanced privacy protocols, no more repeatable mistakes. Improved vendor verification, scammers removed instantly. Automated escrow systems, eliminating middlemen entirely. Law enforcement had won a battle, but the war was evolving. Even with his pardon, the debate over Ross Ulbricht's case hasn't ended. Multiple appeals filed over the years. Over 250,000 signatures demanding clemency, support from major public figures, endless debates over whether his sentence was fair. Ross created a website. He's serving the same sentence as terrorist leaders and serial killers. Silk Road facilitated massive drug trafficking and endangered countless lives. This was no ordinary website. Ross may have walked free, but his creation continues to reshape the digital world. Cryptocurrency adoption surged. Privacy technology advanced. Internet freedom debates intensified. Law enforcement tactics adapted. Governments learned from Silk Road. Now they had better tools, better strategies, and bigger targets. The future of online marketplaces remains uncertain. New technologies are emerging. Regulatory frameworks are shifting. Law enforcement is evolving. Privacy concerns are growing. But one thing is clear. Despite its brief existence, Silk Road fundamentally changed how we think about internet privacy, the role of cryptocurrency, digital black markets, law enforcement in cyberspace. It wasn't just a website, it was a turning point in history. The legacy of Silk Road extends far beyond its creator. It represents the ongoing battle between privacy and surveillance, freedom and control, innovation and regulation, individual rights and public safety. As we move forward, the questions Silk Road raised remain more relevant than ever. How do we balance personal freedom with public safety? What role should governments play in regulating the internet? How can we protect privacy without enabling crime? And most importantly, what are the true limits of digital freedom? Thank you for joining us on A Story Worth Remembering. If this story touched your heart, inspired you, or made you reflect, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Comment below with your favorite moment or lesson from today's episode. Subscribe to our channel for more unforgettable stories that inspire and uplift. Don't forget to smash the bell so you never miss a tale worth remembering. And if you enjoyed this, please like the video. It helps us share these stories with more people. Together, let's keep the art of storytelling alive. See you in the next story.